Hello and welcome to the Empowering Leaders podcast. At Aleda, we are passionate about inspiring connections, and in our signature program, Aleda Connect, we curate groups of 5 to 6 leaders from diverse backgrounds, be it sport, industry, social venture, and the arts, who come together to learn, to connect and collaborate.
I've probably had some of the most radical changes out of that leadership group. The significance of their work and how much it's really about helping others. It made me think, what else could I be doing? And I approached our owner, and within a few weeks we'd raised $5 million to try and solve obesity in the underprivileged community in Milwaukee. So that's one spark that leadership course has caused to contribute and leave the world as a better place.
It defines the word creativity for me. The ability to see connections where none seem to exist. And I think that's the magic of Aleda. Definitely not my usual, workshop panels like humanitarian spaces, but more of an intentional dissection of leadership.
The Empowering Leaders podcast is proudly brought to you by Victoria University, where cutting-edge sports and exercise science facilities like heat chambers, performance labs, and altitude environments mean VU is ranked 7th in the world for sports science. VU, uniquely you. And as always, thanks to Jason Nicholas and his team at Temper Bedding, a mattress like no other. If you enjoy listening to the Empowering Leaders podcast, be sure to subscribe, and please, if you have a moment, leave a review for us so we can reach more listeners and empower more leaders. Suzanne Williams is the Vice President of Sports Marketing at Q30 Innovations, the team behind Q Collar, a silicone collar worn around the neck that, through a slight restriction in blood flow, reports to give the brain an extra layer of cushioning. He's been worn extensively through the NFL, college football, National Women's Soccer League, the International Bobsled Federation, and has other contact sports around the world extremely interested, given the global search to find a solution to concussion-related injuries. Suzanne, prior to Q-Collar, spent 17 years as a senior executive in sports marketing at Under Armour and was herself a 3-time All-American athlete at Loyola University in Maryland. Great to see you, Suzanne. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Now, it sounds like a life full of great success, and when you look back at what you've achieved and you hear me say that back to you, what's the main feeling that you receive?
I just astonishment. I've just been so blessed. I've had so many great experiences, but really I've been surrounded by great people. And it started in high school, went through college, my first job, which was coaching at the collegiate level, and then it flowed to Under Armour. And just truly blessed to be around mentors at every turn in my life. And even into Q Collar now with Q30, I've just been blessed to be around incredible people.
I want to start, if I can, Suzanne, with the impacts of head knocks and concussion-related injuries and what it means. It's probably the biggest issue in world sport as we speak. Can you tell us about your passion for Q-Collar and the role that it might play in this?
Yeah, it's a topic that I've become very passionate about. And if you would have told me 10 years ago I wouldn't have believed you. But I got involved with Q-Collar about 3 years ago, and it was perfect timing. I'd been at Under Armour for 17 years, loved it, never wanted to leave. And I have 2 sons, and they were middle school aged, and, they were athletic. So they played every sport under the sun. And really, baseball, soccer, basketball, tennis, golf, swimming. And then they came to me, and my oldest one said, "Mom, I want to quit all my other sports and I just want to play football. I just want to be Lamar Jackson." And my heart sank. And here I am, a champion of football. I love the sport. And at Under Armour, it was our king sport. I was involved in it every day. But when it was time to sign my child up, I got nervous because it is a very physical sport. And a week after that happened, and, I kind of played it off with my oldest. I was like, "Oh yeah, we'll figure it out. I'll look up some leagues." But really, I'm talking to his dad, like, how do we get him to change his mind without him knowing? We're behind the scenes, like trying to figure out how we can get him to stick with baseball. A week later, I got a phone call from a mutual friend and said, "Look, this group from Connecticut called Q Collar has got this amazing device. They're going to go commercial. They need someone to run sports marketing. Would you talk to them? And I was like, sure, this is interesting, but I really don't have any ambition to leave, but I am curious because it's about football. And it was almost divine intervention because I met Tom, our CEO, and what he explained to me, Luke, which I didn't know because I was like everyone else. I just thought concussions were an issue, right? Everyone talks about concussions. But in reality, the issue is the repetitive head impacts that are happening every game, every practice, all the time. And they don't have to be concussive hits. They don't have to be hits that have symptoms, which is how you diagnose a concussion. The real epidemic, the real issue are these repetitive hits that are happening and you don't even know it's happening. And so Tom really broke it down for me and explained, hey, we've got this device. It's been researched for over 10 years. All these studies have been done, 25 independent studies, and the results are showing that wearing it can help reduce brain slosh, can help mitigate brain slosh, which is what's causing the concussions, right? The concussions don't come from the hit. They come from the brain sloshing within the skull. And what I have found is that when you actually look at how many impacts athletes take, and this is not just contact sports, this is soccer, right? This is, equestrian, rodeo, big wave surfers, mountain bikers. These are all different sports. Every time your brain sloshes, it can compromise the integrity of the structure, which can cause an injury. And so when you back that out and you actually think about repetitive head impacts and you take it out of the context of just concussions, it's actually quite alarming. And the way I explain it to athletes, and I know I'm droning on very long here, but the way I explain it to athletes is it's like trying to say one sunburn caused your skin to be unhealthy or one pack of cigarettes compromised your lung health. It's not. It's the overexposure to sunlight. It's the exposure to smoke. It's the exposure to repetitive hits that can ultimately compromise your health, short-term and long-term. And so really, Luke, our mission is to educate folks on repetitive head impacts, not just let them focus on concussions.
Which is a great distinction to make because I think that conversation has been lost in all of this, that, we've now got this incredible fear, quite rightly, and you've told the great personal story as a mum. I want my boys to be healthy. I want to protect them as we all do. But I think it's a great distinction, and perhaps this is where the conversation needs to go. And I love the backstory to this. I was reading that the inventor was studying the anatomy of woodpeckers, and can you tell us about the idea of how Q-collar has been formed on studying woodpeckers?
Yeah, and it's a great story and it's inspiring. So the actual genesis of the Q-collar, most people don't know, it came about because the U.S. Army went to a group of doctors and said, look, we are losing too many of our war fighters in Afghanistan to TBI, traumatic brain injury. And, that Afghanistan war went for 20 years. So you're losing all these very important war fighters. And one of the doctors that they went to said, the Army general said, build us a better helmet. And one of the doctors said, it's not the helmet, right? If it was the helmet, we'd have a solution. It's the fact that we're not stabilizing the brain within the skull. And he used the analogy, it's like putting a soldier in a tank without a seatbelt. It doesn't matter if you're in a tank. If you move within the tank, you're going to get injured. And he said, we need to find a way to stabilize the brain within the skull. That means we need to find a solution from the inside out. And he's an internist doctor. And so he started looking at, how do I find inspiration within nature? How do they do it? So he looked at woodpeckers, he looked at battling rams, right? These are animals that bang their heads consistently, but are okay to an extent. And so, people get this a little bit confused because our anatomy is not the same as a woodpecker's. So it's not a translation from A to B, but he used that woodpecker theory as inspiration to start looking inside the human body. And what he found is that if you compress the jugular vein slightly, which we have on the outside of our necks, there's a muscle over top of it. If you can compress that muscle slightly, it presses on your jugular vein, and it keeps about a teaspoon of extra blood backfilled in the veins around your brain, and those veins swell and they act like a seatbelt. And he took that research or that concept, that theory, to a neurosurgeon named Dr. Julian Bales. And he asked Julian just to test it on animals. And Julian did rats and pigs in his laboratory and found an 80% reduction in brain injury. So the theory started from, how does nature do it, and then translated over into the human body.
And reading more about it, Suzanne, it sounds a little bit alarming to say we're going to restrict some blood flow, to the head and keep that blood in there. But effectively, you're talking about the same pressure as wearing a tie if you're wearing a suit. And so it's marginal, but you're then not allowing the brain to slosh around, to use your term, and that's where the head injuries come from. And it's as you're saying, it's the repeat nature of that, even if they're smaller but consistent. That's what's causing the damage from the research you guys have taken.
Yeah, and the big part that people don't understand is that you're not actually restricting any blood going to your head. So blood is still going up through your artery, which is inside, you can't get to it. So that's going up like normal. The only blood that's restricted is the blood that's recirculating back to your heart. So it's blood that's already been oxygenated. It's gone up into your head. It's now flowing back through your jugular vein to return to your heart. That is the only blood that's being cinched. So we tell guys it's like putting your thumb over a hose, right? The water's still getting out. It's just a little bit slowed. So there's absolutely no physical impact negatively. So in order for the testing to really start clinically, they had to do performance testing. And so this performance testing measured, how much of that blood needed to be restricted to fill the veins. It doesn't change your heart rate. It doesn't change your blood oxygen levels. It doesn't impede any of the blood going to your head. It doesn't change your reaction time. There's no adverse effects to it. And you nailed it, Luke. It's the same pressure as a necktie. It's a little bit over a pound of pressure, which a necktie is a little bit under a pound. So it's very much like you're going to a wedding and you have a shirt on and a necktie. It's very much the same feeling. There's absolutely no adverse effects. And once all that testing was done, that's when the clinical trials started. And clinical trials included humans. So there's real data. And I can get into it a little bit because, concussions are subjective and there's no diagnostic test that proves you had one or you didn't. All the tests are based on symptoms. And so from a research perspective, the medical community does not accept research on concussions because it's reliably unreliable. So in order to find real data, they used MRI DTI scans, which actually look at the brain structure and the white and gray matter of the brain. And by using those MRI scans, they could actually see if the brain structure was ever compromised. And that's how they based the clinical research. So they looked at very young, healthy brains in high school players, soccer, football, and hockey. They baselined all of them first. They gave half of the athletes Q collars, half not, and they went and played their entire seasons, every practice, every game. And at the end of the year, they re-MRI'd their brains, and they compared the two scans, preseason and postseason. And what they found were the athletes wearing Q collars, 77% showed zero changes in their white brain matter. So their brains were as healthy at the end of the season as the beginning. But the athletes not wearing Q collars, 73% saw significant changes in their white brain matter. So regardless of whether they had a symptom or diagnosed concussion, there were changes in their brain structure. 20 of those athletes were diagnosed with concussions. Some were in Q collars, some were not. What the scans showed were the athletes wearing the device, their return to play was much shorter, and their brain scans showed significantly less damage than the athletes not wearing Q collars. So when you put it in the context of a seatbelt, it's like being in a car. You put it on because in the chance of an accident, it's going to help reduce your body moving in the car. And I tell athletes it can mitigate an injury or can lessen the severity of an injury does occur. Like I would rather bruise my ribs from a seatbelt than fly through the windshield. So, we try to talk to athletes, give them a really good understanding of, you want to reduce brain slosh. There's no magic pill that's going to keep you injury free. But if you can reduce the chance of an injury, you're putting yourself in a better position.
So, Suzanne, I'm going to ask you to put the mum hat back on for a moment. I've got this sense that we need to have a real conversation about risk. Is an old saying that I love. You risk nothing, you risk everything. And what sport has meant to you. I want to talk about your athletic career, your fiance Mike and his world of sport, that has been such a fundamental part to your life, fundamental part to my life. There's always going to be risk. Now, we want to mitigate the risk, and some of the head issues have been life-ending for people. So we're not diminishing that. Do you think we need to still have this conversation around mitigating risk and the incredible benefits of playing sport at whatever level you do? Does that conversation need to be had?
Absolutely. And look, we live in a world where you can't get rid of all risk. I mean, that's just the nature of who we are and what we do. And what I got from sport and how I feel about sport far outweighs, any reason to not play. But if you can put yourself in a position to avoid injury or to do all you can to be successful, why not do it? And I talk to athletes and I mention, you guys eat right, you train right, you sleep right, you recover right, you do all these little things to have an advantage. This is no different, right? And I laugh about this, Luke, because you probably can remember this. And Mike, you mentioned Mike. Mike was the head coach at Notre Dame for 23 years, and he's now with the Atlanta Hawks. But Mike remembers when he was at Notre Dame, no one believed in sleep, that sleep was important to the athletes. And he would be at Notre Dame and, they would never talk about sleep. And then some cockamamie people started showing up being like, hey, we should really work on sleep with your athletes. And half of the department was like, nah, that's a waste. They're college kids, are going to stay up late. Who cares? And so there were people pushing this importance of sleep. Well, fast forward, now sleep is a major part of training. And the same thing with nutrition. And I laugh about this. When we were in college, nutrition did not exist. We got $5. You went to McDonald's after a game. Pre-game was candy on the bus. It just didn't matter. And we were elite athletes. Nutrition just wasn't something that was focused on. Now you go to college campuses and pro facilities. Food is the fuel. So, whenever people dismiss advances in technology or methods of training or prevention, I get it. There's a tipping point, a learning curve, and I believe this is just one of them. People have to understand there is a way to mitigate risk, and if you can wear it, you should do it and do everything you can to try to put yourself in the best position to stay safe and stay available.
Yeah, and we understand a lot more about the head and concussion too. And in our era, there was a saying that injuries above the neck don't count. Just say your name and go back out again. And that's how archaic it was. And we have come a long way. You mentioned fiance Mike Bray, legendary coach of Notre Dame, and now at the Atlanta Hawks, and two young athletes in your house, two boys that I believe are great athletes in their own right. Can you tell us a bit about their growing up surrounded by sporting success with their mum and their home front? What's that like for you as a parent? What sort of leader are you on the home front?
Yeah, it's I had great mentors to look up to, which were my parents. And Mike will say the same thing. So Mike and I both grew up in households where our fathers were high school coaches, high school ADs, and educators. And so we had the same background, right? I grew up in a gym. My dad, I followed him around. He was the high school basketball coach, the wrestling coach, the baseball coach. He was my idol. I followed him around. I was a gym rat. Mike was the same way. And the thing that we both talk about that made the biggest impression on us is that our parents never put any pressure on us to be successful on the field. It just was such a calming environment where they gave us opportunities to compete and they supported us in every way. But there was never this, expectation or pressure. In fact, my dad wouldn't even talk to me after a game. I would be dying to talk to him after a game. Dad, what did you think of this layup? When I missed this, what did I do here? He wouldn't talk about it unless I brought it up with him. We'd get in the car. He'd never say a word. If I made a mistake, he never talked about it. My mom was the same way. Mike's parents were the same way. So we have a very strong opinion about that. We do not encourage the boys to, take things to heart. They're young, they're learning. You're supposed to enjoy the game, be well-rounded. We both were multi-sport athletes. My children are multi-sport athletes. We think that's healthy for their mind, healthy for their body. We just have probably a little bit more of a relaxed environment, but we also are very passionate about schoolwork and teamwork. that you got to do your schoolwork, got to be good in school, but ultimately you got to be a great teammate. And that might mean you're not the best on the team, or you score the most goals, or you're the best defender, but you better be the best leader you can be and be the best teammate. And a lot of times after practice or a game, instead of asking how you did or what you think, it's always, did you try to lead today? Were you helpful to your teammates? Did you encourage your teammates? Were you a confidence giver to your teammates? Because ultimately, Mike was the best confidence giver to his athletes. I learned that from him. And I want my children to understand that, giving confidence to your teammate is priceless, and your teammate will appreciate that and look to you for that.
It's a real piece of wisdom you've just shared. And I love hearing it. I love asking that question, because I often find that the successful athletes that have kids of their own totally get that. And I see this other really ugly parenting thing that's happening in junior sport around the globe, where parents are the opposite, screaming from the sidelines. Conversation in the car on the way home often kills the passion for sport with their kids, because they are all about, why didn't you score more, or why didn't you play like your teammate? And so to hear, people that are at the professional end and understanding the way that you just described is such a great thing. I want to go back to ask you about Under Armour. What an incredible story that is. Kevin Plank was a 23-year-old captain of the University of Maryland football team to go and really take on Nike and Lululemon, these huge, big apparel brands with success. When you look back at Under Armour, and you were there right from the start, you had 17 years. Why was that such a success in your mind?
God, Under Armour was such a special place, and I have so much love for the brand and all the people still there. And it just was such a magical time to be a part of something. But Kevin is fabulous. He's as fabulous as you can imagine. His ability to lead and grow a business out of his grandmother's basement home is just remarkable. What I love the most about it, and I was so fortunate, you mentioned I played at Loyola, which is a small school in Baltimore. I like to say we're a small school, but we were mighty on the field. We competed Division I lacrosse, so we were a 3,000 undergrad, small, private Jesuit Catholic school. But we competed with, the University of North Carolinas and the University of Maryland's and the Dukes and the Virginias and these really great big schools. And so we were the underdog in our league, and we loved it. We thrived on it. I enjoy that mentality. I carry it with me every day. I carried with me in high school because you can't tell, but I'm only 5'1". So I was always the smallest. I was always the runt of the litter. And so I always had this chip on my shoulder and always felt like an underdog. And so I really connected with Loyola in that way when they were recruiting and I was making a decision where to go. And I didn't have a lot of offers, to be quite honest, because I'm 5'1". So I had this really strong passion at Loyola for taking me and loving me, and I wanted to do all I could for them back. And it comes back to Under Armour because we were in Baltimore, and Kevin has started the company in Baltimore. And so, here's this young guy rolling up to our field, and he's bringing these stretchy shirts, and he's giving them to our coach, saying, "Hey, I got this new shirt. I played football down the road at the University of Maryland. It makes you feel good. It wicks the moisture off of you. Will you guys try it?" So our coaches were like, "Free gear? Sure." So they're handing us these stretchy lingerie-like t-shirts. And we were just like, "Oh my God, free gear, we'll take it." So we started wearing it, and we would go play, Princeton and go play Duke and go play, all these schools up in Boston. And we line up on the circle, and the girl next to me would go, "What are you wearing?" And I'd be like, "I'm wearing Under Armour. You don't know what Under Armour is? You don't know? Under Armour is the best. It is the best base layer." So we felt so special because we had something that all these other big schools didn't have. So that is where my love affair with Under Armour started. I really believed in the product. And for the record, he created a category, right? Performance apparel did not exist. Performance footwear did, and Nike did a great job with the waffle trainer, and wonderful. But we were wearing Champion cotton men's t-shirts and shorts and Champion cotton men's sweats and sweatpants. There was no synthetic fibers. There was no moisture wicking. That did not exist. And so it truly was an amazing product that worked. And so I wore it all through college. When I got out, I coached for a year. I was a collegiate coach at Towson down the road. And I had made a relationship with the Under Armour guys at that point. So there were three kind of co-owners. Kevin had two partners. And one of the partners called me and said, hey, I heard you're taking a job at Towson. That's fabulous. Can we sponsor you guys? Can I give your girls base layer? And I was like, sure, like we'll take free gear. We're a college team. We don't have anything. And so we played a season, and I realized quickly I loved to play the sport. I wasn't ready to be a spectator. So I didn't enjoy the coaching side of it at that point. And Ryan called me back and said, hey, we're gonna give you another year sponsorship. And I said, Ryan, that's great, but I don't think coaching's for me. I'm going to try something else. And he was like, oh, great. He's like, well, would you come and interview with us? Because we are a company of men and we need some females to come in and help go talk to other college teams, women's teams, soccer, field hockey, softball, because right now our whole division is men and we're having a hard time breaking through. And so I was like, sure, I'll come interview. I actually went and interviewed at a lacrosse company and was offered a job with them for double the pay and a better title for the record. But I went to Under Armour, I interviewed with them, and the DNA match was just so incredible. It was like, I knew the product was great. It was a bunch of young, hungry, underdog kind of guys that were fighting, these behemoths out west. And I was like, you know what? You offered me half the money and no title, but dang it, like I'm in. And that was the start of it. And so I spent my first few years there cold calling every Division I football school on the East Coast. So I would show up, walk down the corridors of universities. So I was cold calling at a very young age, which is very intimidating. And I'd walk in and down the hallways and I'd knock on the doors and I'd say, hey, I just happen to be in town. I'm with Under Armour. Have you ever heard of this stuff? And, I talked to the softball coach and the women's lacrosse coach and the field hockey coach and the baseball coach and the softball coach. And, these people at that time were like, man, I've never heard of this. And no one's ever called on me before, because at that era, these big university deals did not exist. It was very much the football team got whatever they wanted and everyone else just was ignored. So we spent a lot of time nurturing relationships with people that don't usually have someone call on them, and did that for 3 years, made incredible relationships, sold to schools that you would not, would have never had anything to do with us. And then that eventually turned into outfitting entire universities and coming at it from a marketing standpoint instead of sales. But it was just such an incredible environment to learn in because everyone was learning together. We were so young and just so hungry. It was so cool. And such an underdog, which I totally related to.
Yeah. What a brilliant story, and to a global success. And as you said, starting with great product. But I love the way you told that of literally cold calling door to door and building an incredible business on the back of it.
We all are born different. As we grow, the experiences we have develop into outlooks uniquely our own, charting our life's course. No one sees an idea, opinion, or opportunity like you. And no one sees you like VU. Victoria University. Uniquely you.
Love you to check out our signature program, Aleda Connect. Several hundred people from a range of backgrounds, sport, industry, social venture, the arts, come together in groups of 5 to 6 to learn, to connect and collaborate. We'd love to speak to you.
The Aleda Connect experience for me has been transformational. I met people that I would never have met from totally different spheres. And it's very basic. It's all about relationships. It's all about how we communicate. And what the Aleda Connect group does that is so powerful is when you bring two people from two totally different worlds together, there's no ego. It just leaves room for the real you. And I think that's what Aleda gave me, was bringing back the real me and really connecting to my own leadership style.
We have this saying that success leaves clues, and I love sitting down and hearing your story and the sort of patterns that emerge from different leaders in different environments, and this idea of self-leadership. I want to ask you, how do you make you feel your best so that you can lead others? What do you do specifically for yourself so that you can fill your own cup up?
Yeah, I am. I'm very much in the weeds type of leader. So not micromanaging, because that's different. I'm in the weeds in that I really like knowing what you're doing. And so you feel like you're being supported because I've been there, or I understand what you're going through. And so my coach in college, who is this legendary woman, the late Diane Jeppy Akins, who you've probably heard Stacy, one of your coworkers, talk about. She was just an incredible mentor, along with my parents and Mike. She's really been the most influential person in my life. And she had this one saying, and she would say it about me, and it made me so proud. She would say, Suzanne walks the walk and she talks the talk. And I really live by that. Like, I really want everyone, whether they're on my team or I'm working with them, to know that, like, I'm not above anything. I will be in the trenches with you. We are doing this together. Like, how do we get through this? How do we make mistakes together? How do we get wins together? But just this real team mentality and this confidence that, I can imagine it because I've been there, or I can imagine it because I can empathize with you. And so that's how I look at leadership. I've also, especially in the world of Under Armour, I just was always patient, because I think patience is something that helps you stay in the moment. And so I looked at Under Armour like every opportunity was a chance to learn something that I had no idea what I was doing. Like, you can go to college and get a degree, but that's not a substitute for, like, doing it and living in it. And so with Under Armour, I just was incredibly patient and really took joy in all the different roles I had. I mean, over 17 years, you really grow and change and do different things. And so I would say walking the walk, talking the talk, and then being patient is really what I stay true to.
Yeah, I love that concept of, as you said, walking the walk, talking the talk. What's the one piece of leadership advice that you pass on the most?
I got it from Mike, and I use it all the time, which is be a confidence giver. That doesn't mean you don't speak true and transparent with people, because I think people that want to develop and learn, if they truly want to develop and learn, they truly want to be coached. And that means they want real feedback. So that doesn't mean you're giving false confidence. That means that you're giving people transparent feedback that's constructive, but then you're doing it in a way that if you see potential in them, that breeds confidence. And, I was a very coachable young woman. I was very coachable in high school. I was very coachable in college. And that's because I loved getting feedback. And I always knew that if a coach was taking the time to correct me or work with me, it meant that I had potential and they saw something in me. When a coach ignores you, that means they're done, right? They've tried and didn't get through to you. They don't see the value in wasting more time on you. And so I always feel like when I, find someone that I'm working with and I can coach them or give them confidence or help them, if they're really coachable, they want that and they embrace it. And even at Under Armour, even at Q Collar now, like, I love getting feedback, good, bad, ugly, all of it, because I just feel like it means that there's potential in me to continue to get better. And I'm very coachable with that. And I also think that, getting transparent feedback is healthy, and that people that really want to grow and learn appreciate it, even when it's hard.
I love that, the idea of being a confidence giver. We've all been under coaches or leaders that are confidence takers, and that is debilitating, as you said, not false feedback or not avoiding it, but I love the way you described that. I want to talk to you about vision. You've been involved in projects that have got a big vision. Under Armour was a huge, bold plan when you think about it, and Q Collar is addressing an enormous challenge in the world of sport at the moment. How do you go about not only setting a vision like that, but being able to deliver that within your team?
Being authentic. Your vision has to be authentic. That was the best thing about Under Armour. everything we did was authentic down to the soul. I mean, it was just rooted in sport by real athletes that truly understood the culture. Even at Q Collar, our vision is very much based in authenticity. And by that, I mean, we do not pay people to speak about the product. We don't pay people to say they like it. Our journey has been slow and has been up a steep mountain. And part of it is slow because we have been very, very, very committed to finding athletes who want to understand the problem, want to address the problem, believe in the science and the technology, and then truly believe that wearing it is important to them and it's become a part of their ritual. It's not something that they're paid for. Now, there are tons of marketing agreements out there that we call transactional, and they're beautiful, right? Like there's cars and food and drinks and all that stuff, and that those relationships are wonderful, and you need those, and they do sell things. Our product is just so unique, you can't live in that world. So you either love it and you believe in it and you want to wear it, or there's not enough money in the world to make you say you are. And the analogy I use, and athletes like this, is I say, it's like me paying you to be vegan. No amount of money can make you turn down steak and butter. Because if you want to eat steak and butter, you're going to eat it. Now, if you want to be vegan because you believe that's the best thing for your body and your performance, it's a lot easier to be vegan. And so I tell athletes, like, that's the nature of our business. You have to really believe in the device and wear the Q collar. And then once you do, then there's sponsorship opportunities and marketing opportunities for your time, effort, energy, off the field. And Under Armour was the same way. We just found truly authentic athletes, right? Lindsey Vonn and Michael Phelps and Jordan Spieth. They were truly Steph Curry. I mean, he was truly an authentic athlete in that he believed in the product, believed in the brand, and that's who you hitch your wagon to. The other side of that is that you can have great vision and still make mistakes, which I have plenty of great mistake stories I could share with you. You can have great vision and still fall short and have mistakes, but if the vision and the authenticity is there, you can get beyond it and you can rebound. But you have to be rooted in that true, authentic relationship.
When I sit down and have these conversations, I find people like you are intensely curious because of the way that you are, and that's what's led to a lot of success. Can you share, is there a latest rabbit hole of curiosity that's taken you somewhere of interest that you could share with us?
God, I have really gotten into wearable tech, and it's almost like become too much of an obsession. The Oura rings, the heart rate monitors, the sleep. I mean, it's like I'm checking my phone every day, being like, how much REM sleep did I get? How much of it was good? My heart rate, was it elevated? So like the whole wearable tech thing is very addicting, which I think the companies know. And I think especially women of my age, I've gotten very into researching like creatine. So I think this is so funny. When I was at Loyola, so early 2000s, after weightlifting, we had a trainer, and he would give us creatine, and we'd be chugging creatine, and we're like bench pressing 100 pounds, and we were just like rocks, And then we kind of all got a little bit like, creatine's making us get big. Like, this isn't right. We shouldn't be doing creatine. Now, 25 years later, it's like women eat creatine, and I'm like, it's coming full circle. So I have definitely have been diving down the creatine hole as well right now.
Yeah, I remember the creatine passage as well of time. That's interesting that it's come back full circle. And I've a young athlete in my house doing the same. I want to talk to you about this idea of collaboration we're really passionate about. And we love this quote: the cost of leadership is time. And I look at you as a mother of two boys. You've got your work at Q Collar and the demands of life. How do you balance that all out and still collaborate and foster the culture that you want in all the environments that you're in?
Yeah, I probably right after I had my children, I realized very quickly, you cannot have it all. And that is a false narrative that people say, you can have it all, just go have it all. Everything will be just the way you want it to be. In reality, you need to prioritize what is important to you, and not everything can be important. And so I make very distinct decisions on what is going to be a priority and what is not. Now, they can change. Different phases of life, different things can phase in and phase out. Nothing's written in stone. But I make those priorities clear to myself, my teammates who I work with, my family, my children, Mike, like we're very clear on, right now in our phase, maybe we're not going to have a bunch of home cooked meals, right? That's going to have to be neglected because we're going to have to be working on calls in the evening. But that doesn't mean we can't have great family time. We'll find it in a different way. So we're just very clear on priorities. Holidays are another one, right? Like Mike's season has always been basketball. So we're always right through Thanksgiving and Christmas in the heart of holidays. Well, sometimes you have to sacrifice the holidays, but you make it up in different ways. And so I've just been uber clear about make priorities, communicate with those around you what those priorities are. Once you do that, you have a clear head and a clear heart because you know that you've made a decision and you're not trying to be fake and fill in the gaps that you can't with everybody. So priorities for me are just super important.
And that leads to the other dimension I wanted to talk to you about, and that's the crystal clear communication, which is what you alluded to, isn't it? That you can substitute some things on the basis that you're really clear with your communication. Have you got a mantra about the way you've communicated in all the spaces that you're in?
Yeah. So I have so many great mentors. I had one mentor who he was at Under Armour and he was a great salesman and great marketing, but really had a sales knack. And he would always say to me, most people make the mistake because they talk too much. Say less, listen more, and say less. Let people be heard, empathize with people. And then once you get what you came for, get out, shut up. Like people don't want, you to monopolize their time, like be respectful of their time. And so I found that early on in my days at UA and has stayed with me. It is more about listening. A good communicator can listen, actually hear what the client or the person you're working with is in need of, where the gaps are, and then find a way to help be a solution to that person. And you do that in real life too. You do that with your kids. You do that with your husband, your spouse. You really listen to what's going on before you have an opinion, before you say something.
Yeah, great bit of wisdom to share as well. And it's just often people talk about that great listening is the ultimate form of communication. Suzanne, who's been the greatest leader in your life?
So many great leaders. I do have to say, Diane Jeppy Akins, my coach in college, I have such a soft spot for team athletics and collegiate athletics in particular. It was such a pivotal time in my life of figuring out who you are and kind of growing up and realizing that you can be a part of something really big and not have a personal agenda, right? It wasn't about you or yourself. It was about the team. And so the lessons that she taught me about that just have carried me through life in so many different ways. But the other side of it is she was such a powerful woman. And to that point in my life, I had not seen a lot of what I call CEO women. She was a CEO. She ran a team. She ran camps in the summer. She ran her team like a business. She had to put together her roster. She had to put together her staff. I mean, it was a full-time job and she had 4 kids. And to see a woman like that as a young lady, it was like, my mind was like blown. I was like, oh my gosh, like this woman, like she is a boss, and I had wonderful females in my life before in high school, but you didn't see them like that. You weren't with them 24 hours a day like we were with Diane. And so I just have to put her on that pedestal. She was just an incredible influence in my life.
And Suzanne, I understand she was going through a significant cancer battle right throughout that time as well. To think of the influence she had on you and so many of the athletes under her care. She's a mother of 4, running businesses and putting that together. It's incredible, isn't it? And that must have been a heartbreaking time as well to see the person that was that great mentor struggling at the time as well.
She taught me the ultimate lesson, which I carry with me every day. And that lesson was perspective. Something you cannot learn as a young person when everything is going right. But here we were, 20 years old, our whole goal in life was to win a national championship. Nothing else mattered, right? Here's a 40-year-old woman with 4 children dying of a brain tumor, her 4th one in 10 years. And she would come to practice every day and just be like, ladies, take a minute. Let's look at the sunrise at 6 a.m. Ladies, let's all take a moment to really thank each other for how hard we worked today. So here's a woman that could have been angry and sad and pissed off that she was dealing with this illness. And then she said something to us that, the day she told us, she got sick December leading into our season. We're a spring sport. So she called us all into a meeting in December. We're about to go on winter break for a month. She said, ladies, I have to tell you something. I got a report back from the doctors, and my brain tumor is back. And this time it's inoperable. And it will kill me. So we're in this room, our mouths are agape. We're about, everyone's crying. And she stopped and she said, but I don't want any of you to feel sorry for me, because I get to say goodbye to all the people I love in my life. I get to hug my children. I get to be with them. The folks that went to work on 9/11 had no idea they would never see their families again. Those people we feel sorry for. We do not feel sorry for people like me. I get to live my life to the fullest. That was her message to us. I mean, talk about perspective. Like, it just changed the way I faced every bit of adversity in my life. You're sitting in traffic. Really? You're going to be that upset about it? What is you're going through a hard day. Is it really that hard? Is it really it's like you just learn to flip things. And instead of feeling sorry or thinking it's the end of the world, you think there's a million people out there that have it worse than me. Like,
what an extraordinary perspective, isn't it? It sounds like a remarkable woman to have someone like that in your life, and the way you talk about her is incredible, isn't it? The legacy that lives on through that as a 20-year-old to have that is quite extraordinary. We are a bit obsessed with this idea of collaboration in our world of Aleda, and what happens when you put great people together from diverse backgrounds and the magic that often happens. You've been able to collaborate with some remarkable people in the world of Under Armour and what you're doing with Q-Collar and your own athletic career and seeing that everywhere. Has there been someone you thought, wow, in any of your passions in life, I'd love to connect and collaborate with that person? Is there a name that springs to mind?
The thing I would tell you is that, and you probably have seen this more than not, there are so many more people, you have so much more in common with people than you think. You think you're so different or your worlds are so different. And then when you get to talking to them, you realize, oh my gosh, we're so much the same. Like, it's just, and sport is that red thread. It just carries through, which is just why it's such a brilliant thing to be a part of. That's a great question. I would love to be a part of some of these women team athletes, National Women's Soccer League, the U.S. national team. I would love to work with some of these athletes at that level. I have an incredible amount of jealousy for Olympic sport athletes, because when I was growing up, lacrosse was not an Olympic sport. So the dream of being an Olympian, I never got to, work towards. And so I look at, Olympians in just this, amazing light that they get to represent their country, which is just such an honor. And I'm so patriotic. And so I love to do some collabs with some Olympic teams. Some, national team soccer players. We've had a chance, to get with some of these athletes and just really be a part of their world, at least fake it for a little bit.
Well, it's been a great pleasure to spend some time with you, Suzanne. Thanks for taking the time. The work that you and the team at Q-Collar are doing may be life-changing for many people around the globe. I'm sure there's a lot of interest in it. I can hear your passion for it. It's coming from the heart of a mother wanting her boys to play the sport they love, and maybe you couldn't get a more authentic path than that, and really appreciate it. It's an incredible life story. It feels like many chapters to come. So thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Luke. It was wonderful.